President Buhari calls for a unified single currency in the ECOWAS region.
We need to be clear and unequivocal about our position regarding this process.
Not yet safe to reopen schools. Minister of State for Education tells Senate.
It shows us clearly that children are asymptomatic carriers of this and can probably kill out almost all their grandparents just from attending school.
NCDC confirms 452 new cases of COVID-19 in the country.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss COVID-19, latest situation reports in the states.
Now, for 8 weeks in a row, Good Morning Nigeria connected with state governors, their representatives, and the experts in some states to assess the COVID-19 response and efforts so far made to curtail community transmission. Last edition on situation report in states was on May 28, 2020, with Jigawa, Kaduna, and Rivers states. Do you recall the last of that series, Kinsley?
Absolutely, Kiriani, if you recall as well. We linked up with Dr. Amina Mohammed Baloni, that's Commissioner for Health in Kaduna State, and Dr. Abba Zakari Umar, who also is the Commissioner for Health in Jigawa State. There was also a family consultant physician and health expert, Dr. Tokbe Olamuyiwa, who joined us from Port Harcourt, while Dr. Mohammed Kawu, Acting Secretary of the Federal Capital Territory Health and Humanitarian Services Secretariat, was seated with us right here in the Abuja studios.
Right, and all agreed that this stage of community transmission is one of the most dreaded aspects of the pandemic, following the ease of lockdown, the risk that Nigerians may go back to some of their old lifestyles with very little regard to the dangers of the virus.
Well, certainly that may have been one of the reasons why during the briefing held by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 just 2 days ago, the chairman, Mr. Boss Mustafa, warned against the current disregard for the use of face masks, as well as the ban on mass gatherings. And this followed, of course, a survey which the task force says reveals that 60% of Nigerians in the southeast geopolitical zone do not believe that COVID-19 even exists.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate indeed, Kinsley, because as Health Minister Dr. Sagia Hanere says, the COVID-19 fatality rate in the country is now 2.55%. The task force reiterated that the best strategy for containing the pandemic remains to test, detect, isolate, and treat positive cases. And
the Director General of the NCDC, Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu, stressed that Nigeria's coronavirus monthly case progression is enough to warn Nigerians about the high rate of community transmission, which, as at April 16th this year, was 442 cases. In just 1 month, the number dramatically climbed over 5,000 as at May 16th. And the following month, on June 16th, the number of confirmed cases went over 17,000.
Clearly, the chain of person-to-person and community transmission is escalating because as of today, June 24th, Nigeria now has over 21,000 cases. This number is very likely to keep rising as the spread continues.
So, how do state governments intend to keep the situation contained as over 800 doctors and other health workers have joined the number of persons already infected across the country? And how efficient and effective have contact tracing of COVID-19 patients been? And what new measures can be taken to limit the fast spread of the disease in the country? All these issues and more we shall raise this Wednesday morning on Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kirian Umayo. We are glad to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of NTA. We shall also bring you complimentary segments which include newspaper review, business, and others. Now, coming up next is a news highlight with Comfort Amodu. Hello, Comfort.
Hello, good morning. Morning. Good to see you both. President Muhammadu Buhari has made a case for ECOWAS leaders to bury their differences and commit to the emergence of a credible, unified and strong single currency in the West African region. He, however, expressed concern over the suspicious actions taken so far by the West African Economic and Monetary Union on the issue, warning that progress must therefore be made with caution. The President was speaking at an extraordinary virtual meeting of the Authority of Heads of State and Government of the West African Monetary Zone.
It is a matter of concern that a people with whom we wish to go into a union are taking these major steps without trusting us for discussion. We cannot ridicule ourselves by entering a union to disintegrate potentially no sooner than we enter into it.
Meanwhile, the plan to adopt national single window trading platform for all export and import processes in the country is in progress, as Vice President Yemi Osinbajo presided over a meeting of the committee charged with the responsibility at the presidential villa. And there are now over 450 new cases of COVID-19 in 13 states and the FCT. These 452 new cases of COVID-19 released by the NCDC at about 11:30 p.m. on June 23rd brings the total number of confirmed cases to 21,372 in the country. Lagos has 209, Oyo has 67, Delta has 37, Ogun 36. The FCT has 22, while Abia has 20. Enugu 16, Bauchi 15, with 8 new cases each in Kaduna and Ondo states. Osun has 7 new cases. Imo and Benue have 3 new cases each, while Borno has 1 new confirmed case. Lagos State still remains number 1 on the COVID-19 Nigerian charts with 9,073 new cases. 73 cases rather, followed by the FCT with 1,605 cases, and Kano comes next with 1,190 confirmed cases so far. 7,333 patients have been discharged, with 533 deaths recorded. Our Minister of State for Education, Chukwu Emeka Nwajuba, says at the moment the coast is not clear for the resumption of schools at the ministry, as the ministry will continue with engagements to that effect. The minister was speaking at an interactive session between the ministry and the Senate Committee on Basic and Secondary Education, which called for resumption of schools.
The information available to us, it shows us clearly that children are asymptomatic carriers of this and can probably kill out almost all their grandparents just from attending school.
If we sit down and plan properly, maybe not all the population will move at the same time. We can say this number in the morning, this number in the afternoon, this number, something. We have to be innovative.
The House of Representatives says the gravity of the invasion of Nigerians' property in Ghana makes it a matter beyond arbitration by a national court. The matter, it says, should be settled at a high level of diplomacy. This point was stressed when the House interacted with the Minister of Foreign Affairs on the matter.
It was the U.S. Embassy that was demolished in Ghana. Do we think the U.S. will be talking about apology, we'll look into it? That's what I want to know.
An embassy of Nigeria housing our staff will be so porous that there is no single policeman guarding that premises.
There was no complicity on the part of the Ghanaian government. The president of Ghana is absolutely livid with what has happened.
President Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana on Tuesday spoke with President Muhammadu Buhari, expressing his sincere apology for demolition of a building on the premises of Nigerian High Commission in Accra, Ghana. In a telephone call, the Ghanaian leader told President Buhari that he has directed full investigation into the incident. Earlier in the day, it further emerged that some suspects had been arrested and will be arraigned in court. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, reminds political parties that the conduct of party primaries, including resolution of disputes, will end on Saturday, 27th of June 2020, while the submission of the list of candidates the party proposed to sponsor at the election and affidavits of validly nominated candidates will close at 6 p.m. on Monday, 29th of June 2020. In a statement, the INEC National Commissioner for Information, Festus Okoye, said the political parties should note that the organization and scheduling of various activities and processes leading to the conduct of elections are complex and involve extensive and careful planning, and any disruption of these processes comes with a high cost to the nation. And that concludes the news highlight for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues on COVID-19 situation reporting states currently. We'll continue with Kieran and Kinsley after this break. Good morning.
I just don't understand this coronavirus thing. Is it real?
See, coronavirus, known as COVID-19, it's a global problem and has killed thousands of people in China, Italy, Spain, UK, US, and other countries around the world.
Okay. Now, why are they saying that we should stay home?
Because if you go outside and get in contact with someone who is infected, you become infected and then come back home, affect your family. That's how it happens in other countries.
Now, please, help me explain what this social distance is all about.
See, as we are now, the virus travels through the air and by touch. We must maintain 6-foot distance at all times.
Oh, so it's not by washing my hands with soap and water or hand sanitizer that is only important?
Washing of our hands regularly is very important. But we must come together and fight this virus like we did Ebola. It is our responsibility to each other.
The main way coronavirus spread is when infected people sneeze and cough. Small droplets of fluid expelled by cough or sneezes are laced with viruses looking for new respiratory tracts to infect. When a sick person sneezes around someone who is healthy, the virus can land in the nose, mouth, or even the eyes, causing an infection. Symptoms can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. Symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days. Seek medical advice if you develop symptoms and have been in close contact with a person known to have COVID-19, or if you live or have recently been in an area with ongoing spread of COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network. In this time of despair, our country, Nigeria, needs us now more than ever. We stand a chance to save our great country, Nigeria. A chance to rise up from this pandemic stronger and better. What will be the gain if we do not learn from other countries and observe the lockdown to stop the further spread of the virus? If we loosen our guards and allow this virus dome our very existence, then what have we gained? This is the call to every Nigerian to unite as one and stop the spread of this deadly virus. Stay at home and stay safe. Remember, the virus doesn't move unless we move. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Let's do something more interesting. Let's see.
amazing moms who nurture the uniqueness in our kids while keeping them healthy and safe. So kids, stay indoors, wash your hands, and enjoy your favorite delicious Indomie noodles. Indomie noodles, tasty nutrition, good for you.
Do you not know that our enemies have no face? They are indigents of no state. They come from no place. And if this boat capsizes, every one of us will go under. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer. Do not say, I am the Iroko when the forest is burning. Do not say, I am the Obeche when the forest is burning. Our differences will not stop us from perishing together. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer.
You are watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We now go business. Federal government sets to upgrade Nigeria's commodity exchange as investment experts call for special focus on the informal sector for enhanced economic growth. Let's now join Kunle Adeye for details.
The target of upgrading the country's commodity exchange is to generate more revenue through the marketing of agricultural process. The Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment has identified 8 states where the warehouses would be located.
Your commodities will be graded, weighed, and stored away. Then a receipt is issued to you, which we call warehouse receipt. Warehouse receipt is just a paper evidencing custody of your commodity, that I'm in custody of your commodity. It's an evidence.
Minimum trading volume here is half a ton. An average Nigerian farmer may not be able to produce that. So we are encouraging them to form cooperatives so that their cooperative will aggregate what they have produced, the members.
In another development, as the federal government is making efforts towards reviving the economy by coming up with policies and programs for the different sectors of the economy, investment experts have called for special focus on the informal sector, which they say engages a larger percentage of the workforce, and have identified it as one that can speedily complement government's efforts in bringing the economy back on track. The experts believe Nigeria should take a cue from developed economies, especially the Asian tigers, who have given a lot of priority to their human resources. They, however, called for an all-inclusive approach that will facilitate smooth implementation.
The informal sector is one of the areas where we need to critically look at.
With business news, I'm Kunle Adeye.
Thank you very much, Kunle, for the business package. Next, of course, is newspaper review.
And the newspaper reviewer, Abayo Atebi, is here with us. Abayo, you're welcome.
Thank you, Kirian. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's begin our review by taking a look at the window page of the Nation newspaper. Above the name flag, agreement on eco-currency. Federal government criticizes breach. Details on page 43. On page 5, in greater detail, North governors and security chiefs in anti-banditry strategy. And on page 6, rumble in Ondo Assembly over Deputy Governor. Deputy Governor Ajayi is fired. Now, below the nameplate, it says Akufo-Addo, that's the president of Ghana, begs Nigeria over demolition. Details can be found on page 3. Late story, some politics. It says Wike attacks PDP NWC, that's the National Working Committee, over Obasanjo's ticket bid. And then you have 3 writers to that headline. Rivers Governor, some NWC members are, in his words, tax collectors. Port Harcourt and Ekpoma courts gave conflicting rulings. PDP reports judge to CJN, and INEC warns parties on suits. And then on COVID-19, of course, you have a number of subtitles there. It says, Ondo doctors begin strike, 13 Imo lawmakers test positive, Marley's concert, that is Naira Marley, Mall, that's Jabi Lake Mall, unsealed. Ex-HOS Lord's health workers, and Uguaye grants relief to taxpayers. Minister to immigration officers, be patriotic. And then the usual sidebar there on the front page of the Nation newspaper, you have COVID-19 global cases, over 9.2 million, but over 5 million persons have also recovered with at least 477,000 fatalities. But globally, the U.S. continues to lead in terms of number of cases and in terms also of number of deaths, followed by Brazil, and then you also have the United Kingdom, the top 3 countries in terms of fatalities. In Nigeria, we have over 21,000 now, fatalities 533, and active cases we have 13,500. Those are active cases in the country, with just about 7,000 who have recovered from it. Then right at the foot of the front page, that second lead story, it says, Giadom not competent to call NEC meeting, says APC. What party constitution says, and court stops ex-NWC member. Those are writers to that headline. Details can be found on page 5. Undume to stand shorty for MENA in money laundering trial. That's on page 3.
Okay, now let's go over to the Daily Sun newspaper. ECOWAS summon currency. Buhari rejects replacement of CFA France with ECO. Calls for caution. This is on page 26. Ghana, demolition of Nigerian embassy, attack on her territory integrity. Bajabi Amela. That's on page 27. Then the lead story, more confusion in APC. Police still reopen party secretariat. Giadon fixes virtual NEC meeting tomorrow. He's on his own, says NWC. It's on page 6. Court clears Obaseki to participate in PDP primary. Party petitions, NJC seeks sanction against Port Harcourt judge. Wike abandons Edo governor. Now, COVID-19, 13 Imo cases, well, we've had details of that in the news, so needless going to all the paper has here. WHO approves use of dexamethasone to treat critically ill COVID-19 patients. That's on page 26. Bye.
Yes. Let's start with the critical issue in Ghana. President Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana has spoken with President Muhammadu Buhari, and he is reported to have offered what has been described as sincere apologies for the demolition of the building within the precincts of the Nigeria High Commission in Accra. He indicated that he has directed investigations into the incident, and there are also indications that persons who are involved in it have been arrested and are due to be charged to court. Earlier on, the Minister of Foreign Affairs had appeared before the House of Representatives, and members were incensed and, in fact, calling for retaliatory action on the gross violation of Nigeria's territorial integrity, because an embassy is a nation's territorial integrity. But, however, rational reasoning prevailed, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs has assured that serious initiatives are being undertaken to ensure. One of the measures he explained was that Nigeria is going to examine its document of the owner of the property as compared to the claimant, who also says he has a document indicating ownership of the property. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has also expressed concerns that while the ECOWAS region is contemplating have a currency, the Francophone country have also instituted an ECO of their own, without taking cognizance of the fact that the conditionalities set by the ECOWAS to attain the monetary union has not been fulfilled. this has become a subject that will be taken up later by the enlarged body of the community of the heads of state and heads of government. Meanwhile, nurses at the Mother and Child Hospital in Akure have done truce in protest against the security of their members. They describe the spike in COVID-19 among their members as alarming and worrisome. 10 nurses have tested positive, including 5 other doctors who tested positive, and they are lamenting that since this was noted 96 hours ago, that is since last Friday, there has not been contact tracing, and therefore they are alarmed by the development. Meanwhile, resident doctors in Ondo are also threatening to commence their strike to demand for welfare package. By way of result, yesterday we had 452 cases in 14 states. Unfortunately, we lost 8 of our competitors, now bringing our total fatalities to 533. Our total cases is now 21,371, far behind the 190 to 120,000 that was projected for Nigeria by 20. But as far as that gap is, the worrying situation is that people are not taking full responsibility to enable us tackle COVID-19. Meanwhile, the Minister of State for Education, Chukwu Emeka Nwajuba, has said that the Ministry of Education did not approve for Oyo State to reopen schools. He says the governors of the state are responsible for whatever action they take. However, he says the consent of the ministry and federal government is to ensure that children are not taken into a school atmosphere where their health security cannot be guaranteed. He also addressed members of the National Assembly, giving them indications about their plans to open schools. Meanwhile, on the political level, there's been confusion within the political parties. The Nation reports that the People's Democratic Party has filed a petition against the Justice of the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt for having granted an order restraining and stopping Governor Obaseki from participating in the primaries. Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party in Edo State has obtained a counter order from Epuma High Court that has now authorized and permitted Governor Obaseki to participate in the primaries. The PDP has sent a petition to the Chief Justice of Nigeria saying that the court has acted beyond its jurisdiction. Meanwhile, on the side of the All Progressive Congress, Mr. Victor Giadom, who wields a court order as the acting national chairman, has called for a NEC meeting. Meanwhile, Mr. Hilary Ita, who is sitting in for acting national chairman, Senator Ajimobi, says that by the virtue of the party's constitution, only the National Working Committee can summon a meeting, and therefore the meeting summoned by Mr. Giadom is not authorized. Meanwhile,
I was just wondering, Bayo, just while we'll continue with the review, the Honorable Minister of State for Education, was at the National Assembly yesterday, obviously defending and explaining why schools cannot reopen just yet. We had a bit of that on our news bulletin. I think that it's significant for, as one of the lawmakers indicated, for there to be more creative ways of trying to reopen schools. So it is not sufficient to say that, okay, children could be asymptomatic and therefore potential super spreaders when they are in school. Should all classes resume at the same time? There are those who are in their final year. If you're in primary 6, for instance, you have to write your school leaving certificate. If you are in JS3, you have to write your junior certificate. If you are in SS3, you have to write your WAEC, SSC, or NECO. And then they could deal with those who are in their final year in the first instance. Otherwise, we stand the risk of those pupils, losing a great deal of time because there's apparently no end in sight as to how to respond, to COVID-19. That's one leg of it. The argument might arise, e-learning is going on. How many of the pupils in primary or even secondary schools have access to facilities that will enable them to participate in e-learning? Have we tried to take a percentage of those who have the access. For you to participate in e-learning, you also have to have data, and the data is not free. How many of their parents in public schools can afford the cost of data? And I think that these are critical issues that we ought to bear in mind and spread it out, because we're already, in 3rd week of June. Ordinarily at this time, they would have had just a couple of weeks left for the 3rd term to end, and then they get into the so-called long holidays.
I think the two issues were addressed at that meeting. The Minister of State indicated to the members of the National Assembly that consideration is being given to the students they describe as exit students, the ones you describe who are facing their final exams. On the other hand, members of the National Assembly also said that the idea of using virtual education will put peoples and students in public institutions at disadvantage. Many of them do not have such facilities. It is only the private school, most often than not, that have such facilities that can benefit from that e-learning facility. But it's a balancing act. You have to be put into consideration the health and the safety of the children.
We have to upgrade when it comes to science and technology. That's just the key. We have to upgrade. COVID-19, as you all believe, has really opened up, a lot of situations that were not actually taken care of in the past. Before now, we ought to have gone beyond where we are in terms of being able to have such facilities, especially in schools, even in primary schools. So now is the time, for us to go back to basics, and that is to say, look, we have to upgrade or nothing. And as the world progresses, science and tech becomes more and more important by the day. That's just what the situation is all about.
Ekiti have put a measure in place to check rape. But they have a policy now, what they describe as name and shame. An individual was found guilty of rape, and what they did was they published his photograph on a billboard in his home local government. So what they do now is name and shame. If anybody is convicted for rape in Ekiti State, they will go to your local government area where you are, to publish your photograph and details about you. They believe that will go a long way in eliminating the...
Yeah, that's fine. That's in addition to the sexual offenders register,
yes,
which Ekiti State has and Lagos also has. And I'm sure 1 or 2 other states have also taken that particular step. So it's useful, let's see, but there also should be criminal prosecution.
Yes, in fact, the person convicted...
in all parts of the country,
yes,
not just
the person convicted here
parts,
is in the process for a life imprisonment.
In terms of politics and what the parties are getting into, I think we just allow them to sort themselves out.
Yes.
And then
at this point, we don't have time to talk about the more confusion in APC. That's the details. We don't have time for that. But of course, you know that the party is having issues at the moment. I hope they'll resolve that. At this point, I'd like to thank Bayo for coming in as usual to be part of this. Thank you, Bayo.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, this is Good Morning Nigeria. And it's on the network service of the NTA. Today is Wednesday. We're going to have a very interesting package. Just stay with us.
Coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person, who affects 2 persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the 2 persons have affected 4, and it keeps spreading. You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
Shegun. How far shey tomorrow still dey on?
What's tomorrow?
Community meeting now.
You know they hear Abi?
Na beg. See, if we meet for my house, inside parlor, then go know.
This COVID-19 is not a child's play.
If you want to elect a new secretary, we fit
do one for WhatsApp, or for Skype, or even on Zoom. Or we just wait.
I will not negotiate
this social distancing. It is not negotiable.
Not every infected person shows symptoms, but every infected person is contagious. Avoid large gatherings and self-isolate if you think you might have come in contact with a carrier. Your safety and the safety of others is in your hands.
This message is from the Akinfade Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
Did you know that using bar soap and water protects against viruses? Many viruses are surrounded by an envelope with receptors that enable them to enter a human cell and cause infection. Bar soap destroys the outer layer of the virus and effectively removes it and reduces your chances of contracting the virus. Protect your family from the spread of viruses. Wash your hands using bar soap and water. Brought to you by Medifax and Dettol.
There is a lot of fake news and report circulating, especially on social media, on the coronavirus. Do not believe or partake in the spread of these fake reports. If it is not on the official website or news from the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, disregard such report. Only together can we beat this virus. Only together can we overcome this pandemic. Follow the instructions and guidelines provided to combat this virus. Most importantly, stay at home. Self-isolate, regardless of your status. The virus doesn't move unless we move. Let us work together to better Nigeria. Together, we can do this. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
NTA TV College Jos, an affiliate of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, is currently admitting students for its ordinary diploma programs in television journalism, television production, and television engineering. Interested candidates are advised to obtain relevant information concerning eligibility at our website at www.ntatvc.edu.ng or marketing department of any NTA station nationwide. For further information, contact Assistant Director, Marketing, NTA TV College Jos on 0803-314-4383 or the Academic Office of the College on 0806-980-9807. Announcer, Registrar.
All right.
You are watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live for the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, just before we proceed with our conversation on situational reports from the states with regard to COVID-19, let's take this background I put together by our correspondent, Abdulsalam Jibril.
Since the 27th of February 2020, when Nigeria recorded its index case of COVID-19, there has been a daily increase in the number of confirmed cases of the virus, as well as COVID-19 related deaths across the country. Data from the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, shows that 35 states, including the Federal Capital Territory, have passed the 20,000 mark of confirmed cases of COVID-19, with Lagos State having the highest number of confirmed cases in the country. With this, the community transmission stage of the virus within the country is getting higher, particularly with the ease of lockdown. Despite a series of measures instituted by the federal and state governments, which include ban on interstate travel and ban on large gatherings, amongst others, COVID-19 cases have been increasing at alarming rates. The lack of adherence to these measures and nonchalant attitude of some Nigerians have been blamed for this. In its latest briefing, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 described the growing disregard for its guidelines and skepticism about the pandemic among Nigerians as worrisome and one of the major reasons for the upsurge of infected persons across the country.
In parts of the southeast where we did a recent survey, 60% did not believe that COVID was an issue. In the cities where adherence to these protocols were high in the initial 2 weeks of the eased lockdown, progressively over time, citizens are letting down their guards, and this remains of grave concern.
With the rising cases of COVID-19 across states of the Federation, what other strategies can be adopted towards ensuring that the spread of COVID-19 is contained? What action should the federal and state governments take to reduce community transmission in their localities? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be providing answers shortly.
And in the studio to discuss COVID-19 situation report in states is Dr. Teresa Nwachukwu, Deputy State Epidemiologist, FCT. We thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
And seated in our MENA studio is Dr. Mohammed Makoum Sidi, Commissioner for Health, Niger State. Sir, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, good morning, Nigeria.
All right, and then joining us via Skype from Gombe is Professor Idris Muhammad. He is chairman of the Gombe State Committee on COVID-19. Prof, a pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, let's begin the conversation with you, Professor Muhammad in Gombe. Tell us, I mean, it's been about 4 weeks now since we last took situation reports from the various states, but we have also seen the geometric rise in the number of infections and also fatalities arising from COVID-19. What's been playing out in Gombe State?
Well, as you probably know, about 3 weeks ago, we had a member of the task force who was found to be positive with COVID-19. And he also happened to have been a director working in the government house. So because of that, we decided to close down the government house and test everybody working there, including every member of the task force, their relatives, friends, and associates. And so for that reason, we tested over 3,600 people, out of which we got 250 positive. So that explains the spike that you are talking about. The spike came as a result of massive increase in testing. And that goes to show you the importance of testing in COVID-19. Because unless you test people, you will not know the extent of this infection in the community.
All right, so we're going to continue with you. You said that the spike, the results that you have now, is due to the increase in testing. That is one. If massive increase in testing is yielding results, it then means that many people in that state have not really realized that COVID-19 is a reality. Now, how much of a sensitization is going on in that state, especially at the lower level? Like what I mean here is at the level of communities who live within the city and outside the city. So what is the government doing to increase the effort geared towards making Nigerians in that area know that coronavirus is not a hoax?
Massive testing is, of course, only one aspect of the problem. The other problem is that there has been community spread, as we discovered about 3 weeks ago. People who have never traveled out of the state were found to be positive for COVID-19. As you imply, there's probably lack of awareness amongst the community. And this is true not only of Gombe State, but of the whole country. I know that my colleagues in other states, and as well as the Presidential Task Force, have been worried about the fact that people tend not to stick to preventive measures against COVID-19, either out of ignorance or nonchalance in some cases, I must say. we have been going out into the community along with the community leaders, the traditional rulers, the religious leaders, and generally community leaders, to explain to the people the need to understand that COVID-19 is real and that there is no need to entertain any fear in being tested. And there should be no stigma under any circumstances, because this disease is not a disease that you acquired like HIV. This is the disease you acquire from inhaling air that is contaminated with the virus. It's none of your fault that you enjoy the air that God has given you. And if you happen in the process to get COVID-19, there is no shame in it. If you catch COVID-19, you are tested and you are found positive and treated. When you are negative, you are just normal like any other person recovering from, say, malaria or even gastroenteritis. You are normal. There is no need for people, there is no need for stigma of any kind. So talking about getting people aware, it's one thing to make them aware. It's another thing to make them comply with the regulations put in place to protect them. Unfortunately, some Nigerians, even if they are aware of the consequences of the infection, they do not show the right level of commitment to protect themselves, like hand washing, like sanitizer, but particularly use of face masks. People seem to be averse to the use of face masks, and I just can't understand why this is so. Maybe it is the minor inconvenience of having to cover your face and breathe through a cloth or a face mask. But that's a minor inconvenience compared to getting COVID-19. So what we've been doing in Gombe State is to keep pressing that these measures are necessary to protect Gombe State from being very ravaged by the virus. Because the virus does not respect your social status, doesn't respect your sex, your age, or whatever. So we, in this undertaking, we've been calling on the media to help us spread the message within the community. And it seems to be working in Gombe State, because of recent, we have had people coming voluntarily to the testing centers, asking to be tested for COVID-19. And that's an improvement.
Well, Professor Idris Mohammed, I mean, your Skype connection is so clear. We want to quickly take advantage of it. Just pop in this last question before we go over to the other guest. You say that 3 weeks ago, once you embarked on what we shall describe as an aggressive testing, you identified some 200 persons who were positive. How capacious is the state facility in taking in these persons who have tested positive and are probably also undergoing treatment?
You mean testing facilities?
Testing and treatment facilities.
We don't have a testing center in Gombe State. As you probably know, we've been trying to get one for the past well over 2 months. We have procured our own PCR machine, and we're waiting for the NCDC to come and set up the laboratory and accredit it before we start testing. If we had a testing center of our own, I assure you that the level of testing in Gombe State will far exceed that in other states, with the possible exception of Lagos and the Federal Capital Territory, and maybe Ogun, states like that. But this ramped up testing that I referred to took place despite the fact that we did not have a testing center in Gombe State. We still have to send our samples to VOM or to Abuja to be tested. And that's a problem. Because sometimes, I mean, it's at least 500 kilometers between here and Jos. I mean, here and Abuja, and 300 kilometers to Jos. So it's a hassle getting your tests across to those areas. That if the samples arrive there in good shape, you can get a false negative or a false positive result if the container or the condition under which you take the samples are not right. So I wish we will have our own center, but I think we will have it pretty soon.
Okay, well, that's a good note that they're expecting to have one soon.
Yeah, except
right.
that, well, we'll return to him. The question
of
of when I asked, they said, look, you have 200 persons who tested positive. What happened to those 200 persons? Were they being treated in their homes, or did they get into isolation facilities? And how capacious are those isolation facilities? We'll return to Prof.
I think yes, he's going to explain that as we make progress in the program. Now, let's go to Mina, the Niger State capital, where we have Dr. Mohammed Makunsidi, Commissioner for Health, Niger State. Honorable Commissioner, let us know what is happening in Niger State at the moment. Every state is talking about ramping up testing and ensuring that all persons that may have been afflicted by this virus are detected, isolated, and of course treated. Lead us into what the situation is like presently in Niger State.
Nigerians, the situation is not too far from what my brother and Prof has just highlighted in Gombe State, and I want to believe that that is what is happening in most of our states, the issue of testing capacity. But first and foremost, we want to condole with the families and everybody the resources that have been lost through this pandemic and other diseases across the globe. For Niger State, the situation as of today, I want to mention that we've just recorded our number 80 case positive, that is 80. But I want to quickly mention that Niger State is so strategically located, being at the center of Nigeria. And virtually we are at serious risk, being again close to the epicenter of Abuja. And virtually anybody traversing to north or to southern part of Nigeria, you will pass through Niger State. So we are seriously at risk. And again, taking into consideration the vast landmass of Niger State, constituting 10% of Nigerian landmass, is also a great challenge to us. But most importantly, the issue of testing capacity has been a serious challenge to us. We have written even to the NCDC severally to come to the state, to come and assess what we have, because we also do take our samples to Abuja for testing, and the turnaround time is actually not helping matters, especially in terms of getting them fast, which is the norm, and then also for the contact tracing to be initiated early. So we embark on also having a testing center being financed by the states. So a molecular laboratory, the structure is already being put in place. PCR machines and other things are already in the state. Again, the IBB University, Lapai, situated in Lapai, Niger State, we found out, because we believe that this COVID-19 fight is a multi-sectoral approach. So by that collaboration, we found out that at the IBB University, we even have 9 PCR machines. We have a genome sequencer, and we have human resource that actually have been trained that can mitigate some of these gaps we are experiencing. So, in fact, we are hoping that in not more than 2 weeks or so now, Niger State COVID or molecular laboratory should be set and ready for accreditation by the NCDC. And of course, we are also trying to fund the IBB University so that it also go to meet international standard, so that aside testing for COVID in the long run, because we in Niger State, we are not just looking at COVID event, we're also looking at post-COVID event, so that after it, we can use that center also for research purposes, diagnosis, and even teaching of students. So that center is also receiving attention in Niger State. Some other challenges we also experience are not far from what Gombe is experiencing nationally. The issue of disbelief. I want to mention at this juncture that almost 90 to 90-something% of residents of Niger State still do not believe in this COVID-19. But we want to tell them that it's real. We had what I may call pandemonium when we got our first index case, when people were just agitated that it is not true. People are just using this COVID-19 to get money. But I told them that it is the reserved right of clinicians to make a diagnosis because they've been trained in that direction. Unfortunately, again, the test was not conducted in Niger State, but was conducted independently in Abuja. So it took us a lot of refuting, defending, to ensure that that diagnosis come to stay. And fortunately, the guy did well. As of today, out of the 80 cases we had, only 4 have died. Unfortunately, again, just similarly, is issue of denial and stigmatization. So we have embarked on a serious risk communication because Niger State, I think, is second to Lagos to develop a strategic plan towards combating or containment of coronavirus in Nigeria. And it has about 10 thematic areas ranging from risk communication, infection prevention control, surveillance, logistics, and supplies. And coincidentally, we've also been going in to find out what is the pathogenesis of this disease. And then from there, we found out that it just goes beyond pneumonia and whatever that it causes, but there must be something sinister. And in the long run, we are proven right because it has been found that it has some thrombolytic issues, that is clotting of blood product or blood inside the veins, and those are some of the issues that manifested as symptoms and so on. So even the issue of ventilators in Niger State, we were cautious. We didn't just go into procuring a large number of ventilators because we found out, because we've been doing also experience sharing and watching what is happening around the globe, where we found out that a lot of patients that have even been put on ventilators, almost more than 90% of them died. So we now began to think that really there must be something, not just the serious pneumonia or respiratory distress, something must be behind. So we actually stock a relatively few number of ventilators. But again, while we are doing that, we were stocking other equipment that will again be so beneficial in this COVID event and then post-COVID. Because as we used to say in Niger State, this COVID has actually taught us the relevance of local content. You can see that in Nigeria now, we can even manufacture ventilator. So it is no more issue of you are dependent on other places. So these are some of the things we put in place. We have human resource as a factor in this fight. So from the word go, we also leverage on the experience of Ebola virus outbreak, and we quickly mobilize our staff, train and retrain them, and they are in the forefront of this fight, including their remuneration that we're even discussing. So we do not have any fracas with our health workers. In fact, patients used to run away from other states to Niger State to get treated. We have so many examples of such. So these are some of the things. But again, I must say here that just like it is happening in other parts of the country, it's really pathetic. The disbelief in this disease, the fake news, some mischievous persons, including use of social media to spread fake information that causes a lot of confusion in the country. So we want to, at this juncture, appeal that COVID-19 is real and we must join hands together to fight it. The other challenge is issue of border surveillance. In fact, Niger State, as I told you, has the largest landmass in the country and also shared border with so many states and even international border. So we found it very difficult to man this border. So this has been a great challenge. More than 90% of our patients are actually imported, except in the recent time when we also started noticing the issue of community transmission. So, so far, this is the situation in Niger State. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Malcolm Sidi, for that elaborate lowdown, as it were, on the situation of COVID-19 in Niger. Incidentally, on 2 of our previous episodes on this, we did have the chairman of your state committee on COVID-19, who is also the secretary to the state government. Happily, some of the pictures that you have painted for us today would appear to be heartwarming, but we'll return to interrogate some of the aspects in further detail. Let's now come back to our studios where Dr. Teresa Nwachukwu, who is an epidemiologist with the Federal Capital Territory, is right here with us in the studios. Dr. Nwachukwu, what has been happening in the Federal Capital Territory?
Thank you very much. So we are in the 26th week of response of the epidemiology week, and it's been a wonderful and learning experience for every one of us. So what has happened in the last 1 week, for instance, is that we recorded 22 new positive cases, bringing our cases up to about 1,600 confirmed cases in the FCT. Our laboratory pillar it's at the core of the response, because that's when you know who is a case and who is not. And so we've tested right now about 11,000 cases in the FCT, out of which we have about 1,600 cases. And we have several testing centers in the FCT. The NCDC laboratory is a primary testing center. And so the samples are taken to NCDC, and we have mobile teams that go out into the communities, out into people's homes to take samples. We also have the fixed post at the International Conference Center where people can walk in when they have a code. And we're really, really excited at how successful that post has been, because when that initiative started, we were worried about people congregating and then having the spread of the virus in that place. But that hasn't been the case, because people have to call in, receive a code, and go in there to get tested. And it has worked out exceptionally well. So we're testing, and then once the result comes out, of course, the EPID pillar is a very broad and busy pillar. That's where we have the responsibility of conveying these results to people. If it's negative, we send them SMS messages. If it's positive, we actually call them up to tell them about their results, and then arrange to move them to the treatment center, arrange to do contact tracing, arrange to decontaminate the houses, which we have been doing. And so we've moved many of the cases to the treatment center, and we have people in the 7 treatment centers in the FCT. We have recorded 30 mortalities so far in the FCT. 30 people have died. In the last 24 hours, we haven't lost anyone. In the last 1 week, we haven't lost anyone. But cumulatively, since the pandemic started, we have recorded 30 deaths, bringing our case fatality rate to about 2% thereabouts. So 2% of our cases, we have lost them. And we emphasize again that many of these cases were people with comorbidities and people who are quite elderly. We commiserate with these families, we condole them, because it's not easy. No matter how old someone is, you don't want to lose them. That's the reality. And then we do contact tracing. We have over 20 teams of contact tracers made up of 2 to 3 people each. And once a case is confirmed, a team is allocated to that case to follow up. And some of the challenges we're having with contact tracing can be, one, from the case, and secondly, from the contact themselves. We are surprised to find that people who are positive are very slow to give up the names of those they have been in contact with. You actually have to keep asking and asking, can I have a phone number? Where did you go? What did you do? Where have you been to? And so it's been a challenge, and we're hoping that people understand that. Like Prof said, Professor Idris said, it's nothing that you did wrong. There's nothing to stigmatize people about for COVID-19. So we don't understand why people are so slow to tell us the names of those that they have been in contact with. And so we're appealing to people who are positive to let us contact your family and your friends, your co-workers, wherever you went, let's have those names so that we can follow them up to ensure that they are not infected. And if they're infected, what do we do about it? Because we're lucky we're right here at the center where everything is happening. And then there's an environmental team that goes to decontaminate the house. We found out that there's some homes that have very large numbers. I mean, you have homes where over 15 people are infected. Yesterday, I interacted with a home where 13 out of 15 members of the household are infected. Luckily, they're all symptomless, asymptomatic, which is a good thing for us because we're seeing that kind of profile that the vast majority of our cases are either asymptomatic or they have mild cases. And the unfortunate thing is that instead of seeing this as an advantage for us, people think, oh, it's a hoax. Why are we not seeing the body counts that we see in the West? So I think we should actually be thankful and grateful that we're not seeing those kinds of body counts. So this is what is happening in terms of contact tracing. And so once we move these people, we go to their homes, we decontaminate the homes, and we also give people the skills to actually do this for themselves. Then we also have other teams that are working, the case management teams. We have 7 case management centers, the University of Abuja Teaching Hospital, the National Hospital, Asokoro Hospital, there's a center at Idu, and other centers. So, and we have these places, and what we do is we prioritize where people go. So if people are severely ill or they have severe symptoms, we probably will move them to a center like the University of Abuja Teaching Hospital. If people don't have symptoms or their symptoms are really mild, we'll probably move them to a center like Idu, where we're really observing and giving them treatments and just making sure that we've moved them from the community so they're not further spreading the infection. Of course, I've talked about Asokoro, where we really have to triage when positive cases come to decide where they go.
Dr. Okay, fine. We are at the center, as rightly pointed out, and that means we should be more concerned about this. Abuja has 1,600 cases, and that is not, something to jubilate about, considering the fact that we have so many suburban areas, where people are more populated. You already pointed out that you met a family where 13 out of 15 had COVID-19. I hope it's not in an area like Nyanya, or Maraba, or Jukoi, where you may have more number of persons in one family. And not only that, if you go to those areas, it does seem that people are not even paying attention to what is being informed. Some don't believe in COVID-19 in the first place. So give us a sense, if you could, of the areas in Abuja that is more prone to COVID-19 in terms of all the research you have done in the past, and of course you've told us that you have 20 teams, up to 20, that are crisscrossing Abuja, right, both at the center and of course in the suburban areas. So let's get an idea of what the situation is, because leaving the center and going to places like Idu Karimon and what have you, it's possible that the community infection is on the high side in Abuja. So interestingly, the areas where we have the most infection is Amak, the city center. If you remember when the infection started, it was in places like Asokoro, Maitama, and that was because most of the people returning from outside the country with the virus, we believe, were living in those highbrow areas. And when we started, I'm sure you've heard this story again and again, it was people calling in to get tested. And then when we noticed that the calls were really going down, we decided as a public health department to go into the communities and begin to test. So the FCT, the city center, Amak, is where we have the most number of cases. After that, when we went to Buari is the next place as an area council, where you have more cases. And starting from the 1st of June to the 7th of June, the whole week of 1st to 7th of June, we were actually in all the area councils, went to Abaji, Kwali, Kuje, Gwagwalada to do a community test, and went to
many villages. We're not just talking about the area council headquarters. We were right into the villages, and we did find infections. The infection rate is low in other places compared to the city center. So the city center is where we have most of the infections. And yes, we're noticing that there are places like, if you've heard the place like Mabushi, which is a high density community where we have a lot of infection, a lot of positive cases. And again, the challenge, as you would understand, is that many in these places don't believe that there's coronavirus. Many in this, and the family I talked about, no, it's not it's actually in a highbrow area. So they have their own well-gated house. So they're just in a community of their own with no contact with anybody. So that's safe. But yes, the infection is in most of the area councils, AMAC being the place with the highest level of infection.
All right. 7 treatment centers in the Federal Capital Territory, where Lagos complained at some point that they were running out of bed spaces. Is this the same situation here in the Federal Capital Territory?
Absolutely not. We are definitely, we have not even met our capacity for the bed spaces that we have in the FCT. So right now we have about 500 people on admission, and we have about 1,000 or thereabout available bed spaces, with more being prepared. So we're not at capacity.
I was also wondering, some weeks ago, the Honorable Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Hanire, did say that the government had prescribed a new treatment regime, as it were, for persons who are asymptomatic or who have mild cases. That rather than take them into a treatment center, they could be otherwise treated at home and so on. What has been the practice in the Federal Capital Territory?
As at today, as a matter of fact, today is Wednesday. On Monday, I was part of the team that is beginning to put some kind of protocols together to start home treatment for asymptomatic cases. I know that the NCDC we've been having that conversation with the NCDC to see how we can manage cases at home. Because a lot of the people, when you call to tell them their results, they say, but I'm fine, I don't have any symptoms. And truly, it doesn't make economic, medical sense to move those people to a treatment center. If they have the capacity to self-isolate at home, then we are very strongly considering, and as I speak to you, I bet that in the next 1 week, there's going to be a formal statement about that, on how people can self-isolate and have care at home.
Okay, thank you. Let's return to Gombe, where we have Professor Idris Mohammed. So you told us earlier on that the state government is working hard. Well, is he back? Okay, he's back again. We are reaching Gombe via Skype, so we can always have situations arising. Losing the contact and of course gaining it again. All right, so I hope you can hear me clearly. You told us that the state government is working seriously to establish some testing laboratory in that state, as it will make it easier for the states to detect those who have been infected by this virus. Let us know also how those who are positive are being treated. How are they being managed? Are they in a particular setting or hospital, as the case may be, or are there persons that you consider to be treated at home? If that is the case, how is the treatment being coordinated? And if you like, let us also know the kind of treatment protocol that is being used in Gombe at the moment.
The network is extremely poor.
I think we are still having glitches along the line of communication with Dr. Idris there in Gombe, and so let's go to Mina, where we have a clearer signal, and then there we have Dr. Mohammed Makun Sidi. Actually, you had enough time to explain what the state government has been able to do and is doing You also talked about the post-COVID. That means that you are proactive, with respect to part of the explanations you gave in your opening remarks. But now, how are you managing those who are affected in terms of treatment, in terms of persons who may be treated at home? What qualifies you, or what makes it, what forms your decision to treat some category of patients at home, and of course the ones that are already at the isolation center? Let's also understand how you are managing the treatment. And I also would like to ask, what protocol are you using at the moment? It does appear that the medical community has not been able to come up with the therapy being used, and it does seem that each state has its own therapy or whatever protocol. But there's no uniformity in what is being administered on patients who are positive. So let us know, please, if you will.
As I said, this is science, and from experience sharing, and what we also had in the past, especially from Ebola outbreak, and what is happening globally, including Nigeria. So we use those to package our protocol in line with World Health Organization and NCDC. But I must quickly mention here that yesterday we had National Council on Health Summit, and this issue of house treatment or community treatment came on board. And we're actually working assiduously to see that it comes to play because of economic burden on the individual and even the nation entirety. So what we do in Niger State, I have told you earlier that Niger State is so large in landmass, hard-to-reach areas. We have over 4,000 hard-to-reach areas, bordering with even Benin Republic and other states. So it actually poses a lot of challenges to us. So what we try to do, Mr. Governor directed that to start with, the issue of quarantine. We have 8 emirate councils. Some of them are large, some are small. So we try to see if we can establish quarantine centers in these emirate areas. But unfortunately, because of fiscal space constraints, it was very, very costly. And we drew another line of getting ambulances or vehicles available, train the health workers, including the drivers, providing them with PPEs on event of having any suspected case. So we couldn't actually, in that large scale, open quarantine centers in all over the states. But what we did is to have big quarantine centers in Mina. And unfortunately, because of the risk communication factor that has played so well in Niger State, before now, because now we are already getting used to corona, people are not in that extent to panic. In those days, once anybody arrived, even from Mina to another village, we will get a call from our EOC center that, look, somebody has arrived from Mina, please come and pick him. So we had that robust risk communication system that has played for us, so that in event of any new arrival, we get information immediately and the person is moved to our quarantine center. So we have quarantine centers, 3 of them in Mina. We have the social rehabilitation center that can accommodate about 50. We have the Sangaya. We have the one at Kais that can accommodate close to 1,000 people. Then, of course, also since we have that risk communication so robust, in the event of any arrival, we station vehicles in each of the local governments, and then, of course, train the driver, train the DSNOs and other related officers. So in the event of any, the patient, the suspect is brought to our quarantine center. There, of course, definitely like it's happening, we also feed them because they don't have access to external environment. Now for isolation centers, again, before now, during the outbreak of Ebola, we leveraged on the isolation center that was in place. As at that time, it was a 16-bedded capacity. So we upgraded it, put all the necessary machines, including ventilator, trained the staff, retrained them, and we were even doing simulation before the first case was identified in Niger, 10th of April. So aside that, we have another isolation center, which was donated to us, that can accommodate about 50 patients. fortunately, just like Abuja, we have not also been, made up the capacity that we have in place right now, because at this moment we have less than 10 active patients on admission. Then we are also opening up another isolation center at Kaiz that can accommodate about 80 patients. Because I must quickly mention here that the Northern Governors Forum agreed on this issue of taking back the advisories to their parents or back to their state. What we resolve in doing in Niger State, unlike other states, we quarantine them first in Niger, take samples and test them. Anyone that is positive, we send them, we treat them first, and then send them back to their respective state with result accompanying them. And if they are from Niger State, they are now reunited with their parent with a serious agreement and even undertaking that these children should not be allowed to go to suffer again. So we have principally now 2 standard isolation centers. Human resource, equipment, and consumable are being put in place. We have been exercising fear because of this issue of disbelief on each community treatment or treatment at home. And yesterday, it was part of our serious deliberation at NCH, how to go back to that so that we do not have experience of what happened in Spain and other places, and including Lagos, where the health facilities are now stretched. So we have to again be involved in risk communication, because typical Nigerian, because he's not exhibiting any symptom, unknowingly to him because of poor health education, even if he's positive, he feels he can go to any wedding, he can go to any ceremony. So before you know it, this man that is tested positive, for him to be self-isolated, you will now be seen in all over the places. And then, of course, there you come, you now have a serious outburst of cases. So this is what we are doing in Niger State. We have also tried to go into case search into our communities. What do I mean by this? Because the level of response of the communities now to any new arrival has plateaued. People are not responding, are not telling us again, except if somebody is exhibiting symptoms. So we use our disease surveillance and notification officers. And in Niger State, we have what is called Community Health Influencers Program, where we recruited individuals in their community to help us identify some other notifiable diseases, including encouraging the locals to seek for healthcare services. So we are now aligning this program with the COVID intervention to be able to tell us who in the environment or who has arrived or who.
I just want, Dr. Malcolm Sidi, sorry for the interruption, but while you're still telling us what is happening in Niger, I don't want to be cynical, but it's somewhat curious in the context of our conversation that Niger State has recorded just 80 cases, and considering your proximity to the Federal Capital Territory, which on its own has recorded 1,600, I was just wondering, how much testing have you done in the boundary communities or towns? Suleja is pretty close to the Federal Capital Territory, and as you do know, there's a lot of commuting that takes place between the Federal Capital Territory and Suleja. Madala is also another place that is near the Federal Capital Territory. Zuba, of course, these are all areas where you have a great deal of commuting. Plus, the experience we had some weeks ago, as you rightly indicated, Niger State is smack in the middle of the country, and your SSG did tell us about the challenges that they were having in turning back persons who were breaching the restrictions on interstate movement. So once again, explain to us just why it appears that you have so low in figure with regard to persons who are positive. 80, you said. Have you actually also gone into, shall we say, aggressive testing in the boundary towns and communities, Madala and Suleja, for example?
As I said from the beginning, that testing is actually a serious challenge to Niger State, and that is why we are going into having our own molecular laboratory, and then, of course, establishing another at the IBB University. We have not done enough at all comparing the population and, of course, the strategic position of Niger State. We've done less than 1,000. But again, Suleja is very close to Abuja. So many of the cases in Suleja are also being recorded in Suleja, in Abuja, National Hospital and Gwagwalada. So now some of those numbers there in Abuja are actually from Niger State. We actually have to be interfacing with Abuja because some of the results they will take will actually be reading Niger State. So we have to come to an agreement who is coming from Niger, because sometimes the results are even released to us, meanwhile the patient is in Abuja. So we added up all this, but realistically we have not done enough in terms of testing, and that's why we are going aggressively to have our own center. Our governor, Mr. Alhaji Abubakar Sani Bello, during the Northern Governors Forum, we're actually going to collaborate with Kaduna State government to take a stock of a mobile testing center. So all these are in the pipeline, but in real sense, we have not done enough in terms of testing. But again, we are very fortunate enough that I told you that Niger State was the first to implement lockdown, second to Lagos and Abuja after the declaration of Mr. President. And this has done a lot of magic to us because a lot of vehicles and people have been turned back. We do not, because of course it's an imported disease in the first instance. So we were actually battling at the borders, not allowing people to come in. And I told you that over 90% of our patients so far are actually imported cases, except in the recent time when some of our people traveled to Abuja and came back and now began to spread the infection. So these are actually the things that have happened. So basically, this risk communication system has worked a lot for us. Security-wise, everybody was engaged in looking towards a new arrival, and those that are supposed to be turned back are actually turned back. We also recall that some of our clients that actually came from Kano that we intercepted at our borders, we tested them and they became positive, ran away. If up to now they are still on the run, we've not been able to track them. So these are actually the things that are happening in Niger State. But we believe that if we are given this opportunity, because we've been with NCDC, we've written to them reminders that, look, we want to do more testing, especially with strategic positioning of Niger State. And that's why we even start our own, because they are yet to come to verify what we claim to have. As I told you, we have about 9 PCR machines already in place. We have genome sequencer. We have all sorts of equipment. We have professors of virology and immunology that will leverage on this to fast track. So it's actually a disturbing situation that at this moment we have not been able to do a lot of testing, because I told you before now, it takes almost 7 days to get a result from NCDC. It's not that it has become 48, 72 hours. So, for instance, all the advisories we brought into our camps, we test all of them before returning them back to their various destinations. This is what we do. We don't just quarantine them. So that's what we have done, and our number is still 80.
All right, Kingsley, it's quite interesting. You have to admit that they have serious challenge in terms of testing in Niger State, and that being the case, of course, we want to believe that the state government will make extra effort to expand their testing capacity.
There's one other point that he made about some persons, who tested positive and are now on the run, and they're still well after them. Well, it's a very serious matter.
Exactly, and in that case, if such people are living within the society or wherever they run to, they are just busy there, transmitting the disease. That's the implication, and it's very easy, for somebody staying close to you to take it in, and when that happens, it sticks.
Yeah. Why? I don't know. It's a bit of a challenge. Maybe we can also ask our guests why it appears that some persons who test positive and have come to be taken away, let me not say evacuated by officials, by the health officials, they try to resist. There was a video that went viral on the social media of a gentleman who was being taken into a bus. It was like you were battling with some very stubborn fellow. At some point, one of the officials was saying maybe they should get a rope.
Because I was wondering why he was struggling. He had about 4 men on him. I wonder what he thought he was going to be able to do in terms of strength. And besides, those people trying to get him in are not even protected.
They had no PPE. So it was quite an ordeal.
It is very dangerous, very, very dangerous, and we have to take a serious precautionary measures. Now let's return to Professor Idris Mohammed in Gombe. We hope that we'll have the signal. We have a clear coast, right, to talk to him. I believe you had the first question that I asked before we started having glitches along the line of communication with respect to the issue of having a testing laboratory which you are working on. And again, if you will, let's know the treatment protocol that is being used in Gombe to treat those who are currently positive.
You can hear him there. I can't hear.
All right, you can hear us. Our engineers will be at work in a moment from now to see whether they can rectify this situation. And when that happens, we will return to you. That is persistent, Kingsley, and he's not so going away for us this morning. But anyway, we have capable engineers that can get something done. Back to Abuja here, we have Dr. Teresa Mwachuku. Well, you have really explained that yourself with respect to the efforts being made in Abuja to see that the coronavirus is contained. And in terms of spread, what would you tell us about the pace, if you like, of the spread, in Abuja? You just had how many persons just yesterday, but there was a time we had almost 100 cases, right? Are we still on ascendancy, or are we gradually, descending, or trying to flatten the stuff? So where are we in Abuja? And Abuja being the center, I want to believe that you also have some other people in the medical community across the country that you talk with. And again, I would like you to also speak about the issue of a treatment protocol, which is not uniform.
Thank you very much. So let me start with the treatment protocol. Of course, I'm not going to talk about specific medications because we know what happened a few weeks ago when somebody who was discharged from a treatment center put his his drugs on social media. And I can tell you that a lot of people went on to buy those medications and to begin to take just in case. So we will not be specific in terms of mentioning the names of medications that people are taking. But yes, I do agree that there are one or two treatment protocols that we're using in the FCT. And the idea is, because this is something new. This is something everyone is learning on the job, so to say. Everywhere, from Europe to the United States, everyone is learning and finding what works for them. And that is exactly what we're doing. And I think we're getting results from the protocols that we're using. So there's no uniform protocols right now. There are lots of propositions with research. There are lots of things coming up, and people are using all that. Now, talking about moving people to the treatment center and whether the spread is getting worse or better, I think we're not seeing as high a spike as we were seeing in the beginning. But what I need people to know is that the more we test, the more positive cases we're going to see. So the important thing is to increase our testing capacity. If we're testing, the positivity rate sometimes could be about more than 1%, which means if you're testing 100 cases, you're going to get one. For every 200 cases, you're going to get two, okay? So it depends on how many cases you're testing. If you're testing millions of cases, you're going to be coming up with hundreds of thousands of positive cases every day. So it just depends on the number of cases we're testing, and that's the target that we have, to increase our testing capacity. And then getting people to move to the treatment center. What we have done in the FCT, like I said, this has been a learning process. So we each day we find out what works and what is not working. And we were having so much trouble moving people to the treatment center. And then again, as we're getting more cases, it's overwhelming the system. So if you have 100 people to move, and we insist that we must take our ambulance to these different homes spread around the FCT, whether it's in Gwagwalada or it's in a village in Abaji, when we insist that we must take the ambulance to move them, it's practically impossible for us to cope. And so what we have done in the last few days is to say, you know what, especially if you don't have symptoms, you can actually go to the treatment center by yourself. So things are changing, things are unfolding, things are getting better. And so we're going to see a lot of changes, a lot of improvements, a lot of responding to emerging situations as the pandemic unfolds. So, yes, so the flattening the curve, we haven't reached there yet, but the peaks are not rising as fast as it was in the beginning.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Wanchukwu. And presumably, in terms of resistance to being transferred to a treatment center, obviously you are not experiencing what we saw in that social media post with regard to the gentleman who was resisting. And then, of course, the health officials were requesting for a rope, to get him into the bus. Thank you very much. And indeed, our guests, Gombe is still a challenge in terms of the Skype connection, but Mina is still there. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation and also take your tweets.
Wetin be this coronavirus thing? Na true?
You see this coronavirus, will be COVID-19. Now the whole world palava. And it don't they kill many people for China, Italy, UK, US, Spain, and even for other countries them.
Okay, wetin come be the reason why they say make everybody tanda for house?
Now because if they waka pium go carry them from person who don't get them, you go carry come give your family them. Now so the thing take they kill other people for other countries.
Okay, wetin come be that social distancing self?
You see social distance. Now make we no come close because this thing now from air and touch now with the contact them. We suppose they at least 6 foot away from each other every time.
So, okay, no be only to wash your hand and to sanitize them alone.
Make we not take this washing of hand thing take play, but make we come together. Join hand as we take pursue Ebola, pursue this coronavirus. Make we be each other may keep us now.
We're here for small businesses, the local entrepreneurs. We're here for the smiles, the good times, for those who would come from far. Put your business on the map with Visa. Where you shop matters.
Nigerians, coronavirus is dangerous. It can kill. When you see this sign, high fever, cough, shortness of breath, drowsiness, pneumonia, don't panic, don't hide. Don't embark in self-medication. Promptly visit the nearest medical facility. Report all cases to the nearest hospital. Prevention is key. Avoid contact with infected persons. Avoid crowded areas as much as possible. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Your life is precious. Stay alive. Live long, live right. This message is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture and the Nigerian Film Corporation. Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibility.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 22 55 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
Nigerians, let us take responsibility. Stay healthy, stay safe, and curb the spread of the virus. Take responsibility. The coronavirus spreads from one person to another. Let us avoid crowd gathering of any kind for any reason. Take responsibility. Avoid traveling from one state to another during these lockdown restrictions. Obey all the rules that are put in place. Take responsibility. Stop spreading fake news and unverified reports about the coronavirus. There is no known cure for COVID-19. Take responsibility. Observe all the measures that can help stop the spread of the virus. Together, we can do this, but only if we take responsibility. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
All right, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's return to Gombe via Skype, where Professor Idris Muhammad is still with us. Professor Muhammad, again, we have to apologize for the snags that we have experienced in reaching back to you. I just would like you to tell us, in addition to what you have for the treatment of the patients in terms of the availability of centers. Let us also have an idea. We have reports from different parts of the country that health workers are also being infected, and this is causing some resistance, in terms of their willingness to begin to take care of patients. What's been your experience in Gombe?
Well, let me start with the issue of workers. Luckily, we have very few health workers being infected with COVID-19 in Gombe State. So far, we have had less than 10 health workers of all categories being infected. Unfortunately, we lost one doctor amongst them, but the others have recovered or are being treated successfully. The health workers are being paid as and when due, and we have had no problems with them in Gombe State. As for isolation centers, we have 6 isolation centers, active isolation centers in Gombe State. 3 are in Gombe or within 10 kilometers of Gombe. And there are 2 in Bajoga, which is about 70 kilometers away. And there's 1 in Kaltungo. So we have 6 with a total bed capacity of over 400. As of now, I know about the time I was about to finish my last intervention, one of you was trying to ask what we did with the 250 positive people. As a matter of fact, many of them were able to self-isolate at home. As some of them made clear publicly, there were 5 legislators infected and 4 commissioners, state commissioners, and 1 special advisor. All these were able to self-isolate in their homes. And we visited the homes to be sure that they could do so before allowing them to self-isolate. As of yesterday, we had only 70 people on admission. So our 400-bed capacity isolation centers are mostly lying fallow as of now. So our capacity is quite good, despite the fact that we have ramped up testing, and we intend to do so. What's happening is that the cases we're discovering them early enough so that before they become symptomatic, so that most of them, the great majority of them, 99% of them, are able to recover and return home healthy. Or when we have to admit them to isolation center, they spend the minimum number of days before becoming negative and being discharged. So we have no problem with isolation facilities in Gombe State as of now. I don't know what will happen in the future, because my hope is that we will have our own testing center within the next week or 2, and then we shall ramp up testing. At the moment, we have tested about 5,000 people from the beginning of the pandemic to date. If we had our own machine, we would have tested many, many more people. And the downside to you test, the more positives you will get. And we have had people complaining there are too many cases in Gombe State. Well, there aren't too many cases in Gombe State. We were able to discover many cases because we did a lot of testing. And testing is key in the control of this pandemic of COVID-19. Testing is key. I cannot emphasize it sufficiently, because I know that many people are averse to being tested because they don't want to be labeled as having been COVID positive because of stigma. And that's another issue that we need to face in this country. There's absolutely no need for stigma regarding COVID-19 infection. It's like malaria infection. It's like if you have typhoid or gastroenteritis, you recover, you are well, you are back to normal. So there is no place for stigma, there is no place for complacency. We appeal to people to come forward for testing in the understanding that when they are positive, they will be taken care of. And as you know, one of the problems is that when you isolate people in this time of economic hardship, they complain to you that their families are not being catered for. We in Gombe State, the government has set up a palliative committee headed by the chairman of the Gombe State Council of Emirs and Chiefs, the Emir of Gombe himself. And they've been distributing palliatives to those needy people in addition to those who are isolated in the isolation centers. So we have no problem in that respect. And the only problem we have is that in a few areas, when our rapid response teams turn up to trace contacts of those who are positive, they are chased away. And
all right, you've just nailed it. That Nigerians should, not pay attention to some behaviors that will be inimical to the fight against the virus. You don't have to isolate yourself from somebody who has come out of the virus, somebody who has been successfully treated. I wanted to ask you a question. If you can answer that in 1 minute or less. Many people are not happy about how patients are being treated at the isolation centers. At some point, we had some patients who protested, publicly on how they are being treated at the center. Some said, look, they had to drink Gary. Some said, look, they only give them just vitamin C, and nobody caters for them, and all of that. It went viral as at that time. I don't know what the situation is in Gombe, because I know that at Gombe also, some people there also protested then. Has it improved? That is the way patients are treated at the isolation centers. In few seconds, please.
I have heard that complaint before. I can assure you that this is not the case in Gombe State. We had an isolated incident at the beginning of this pandemic when some people in one of the isolation centers just outside Gombe came out on the streets to demonstrate on some very flimsy excuses. I know one of the excuses was that they were not giving adequate food. And they also said that they had no medication, which is not true, and that there were no doctors. At no time did we leave any of our isolation centers without 1 or 2 doctors, usually 2 doctors. And the single incident I'm referring to was solved within 24 hours. And this was well over 6 weeks ago. Since then, we have had no problem whatsoever with people we isolate complaining about lack of care. In fact, they watch satellite television in the isolation centers, and they are given the best food possible. So far, so good. We have no complaint in Gombe State.
All right, Professor Idris Mohammed, thank you very much there for your explanation. Let's return to Dr. Makunda Sidi in Mina, who's the Commissioner for Health. Dr. Makunda Sidi, well, I don't know, you try to be very brief to this long question I'm going to ask you. You have taken an international perspective to your approach to how you're responding to COVID-19, because there are lessons, you say, to learn from the global experience. One, how much do you get to interact with the presidential task force in terms of feeding in information into their data bank from what you are experiencing in Niger, how you are coping with it? That's one. Secondly, and this is particularly very critical, we just played one of adverts a while ago saying that boosting the immune system is relevant to combating COVID-19. And one of the ways experts say you can boost the immune system is through vitamin D. And the easiest source for getting vitamin D is exposure to sunlight for some determinate period, of at least 30 minutes, but not more than about an hour on a daily basis, and depending on when the ultraviolet rays are most prominent. We have abundant sunshine in Nigeria, as it were, unlike the temperate climate where you had a number of fatalities when they were just getting out of winter and then getting into spring. Do you find, I want to tap from your experience of trying to internationalize this issue, do you find that perhaps we are not exploring our local circumstances sufficiently to actually determine why our numbers are low and whether we can actually proceed by taking precautions and not get ourselves too tied down with the mechanisms that seem to have worked or are not even working in temperate climates?
We are not only sharing experience with international organization environment, but also locally. We have a forum of commissioners, we have doctors, various forums where we are interacting with ourselves to see what are the best practices. And just like my colleague in Abuja said, in the issue of treatment protocol, every virtually center developed its own protocol. So that is on that note. It's not only the issue of international, but we're also comparing notes locally. And I've told you from the beginning of my statement that COVID has actually taught us of the relevance of our local content. And I also told you that IBB University Lapai, which is a training center and also a research center, is also proposing, has even done some local researches on those things that we are actually leveraging on, and also seeing our numbers not escalating the way they are actually expected. And very soon we are going to unveil this, because we're also in partnership with some organization to bring out some research topics which the university has already been embarked on, and why are we actually not having these figures. On the issue of liaising with the Presidential Task Force, before now we have what is called Emergency Operations Center in Niger State. It was actually commissioned by the DG NCDC, which was upgraded by USAID recently. And then, of course, it's like an international center where we see what is happening around the country and globe at large. And where there are issues we need to come in, we also learn from those. For instance, I told you the results that we used to get from Abuja, from the laboratory, where the patient is not actually resident in Niger State, but because he's maybe resident somewhere, but he now say is from Niger State. The result is now sent to Niger. So why not, because of those collaborations, we wouldn't have known all this. So we share experiences and share information with especially the NCDC laboratory. And of course, there is the NCH, that is National Council on Health Summit, where states report what they are doing, what are their challenges, and what are the next steps. So from this environment, we also learn experiences and we share them and then implement accordingly, according to our own locality.
Thank you. We have some tweets now. There's time for us to take them. Let's see what other Nigerians are saying. Those who are opportune to reach us via tweets. Now, what Abdul says, what I watched on NTA Network News yesterday is very disturbing. Most people don't believe COVID-19 exists. State governments must come up with more stringent measures and strict implementation to reduce the community spread so as to flatten the curve.
Mike Ayankwa, there has been an increase in the cases of COVID-19 across the country in recent weeks. The reason for this is not far-fetched. For instance, many people still believe that the COVID-19 is a charade and doesn't exist. Hence, many of the COVID-19 protocols are not being observed.
All right, Delejak Solomon, testing is one of our most important tools in the fight to slow and reduce the spread of impact of the coronavirus. Testing will allow us to identify infected individuals, guiding medical treatment, enabling isolation, tracing, and quarantining of the infected. Let's do more.
Chris Simeon, now the increase in COVID-19 cases is the result of people not adhering to the safety protocols. Federal government should set up a special task force to monitor people in public places if they're observing the precautionary tips.
All right, Festus Akimboewa, Some state governments have a lackadaisical attitude about COVID-19 and are not doing their best to control it. I fear the virus will soon bring us to our knees if these state governments continue with their lackadaisical attitude about the virus. States must increase testing and contact tracing.
Among Balahun Babs, as of today, many Nigerians have abandoned the use of face masks. Go to states across the country, there are no forms of social distancing.
Nandamji, when there is an outbreak, everyone is a suspect. But as soon as we think the storm is over, we forget and begin with our unhealthy lifestyle.
Ibrahim Bello, the truth is that the fear of COVID-19 has died down and people have come to accept it as a new normal. Most people no longer see it as scary as it was at the beginning.
All right, let's thank Ali Utajuddin, Eno Ayuk, Nsima Sperdibran, Ekong, Adamu Stefanos, and Bashir. We can't just take yours today. Also, Inomatics and Idris Yunusa, we appreciate your concern this morning. Okay.
All right. Those are the things that we will, of course, we can take as Kirian indicated. The guest in Abuja studios, Dr. Teresa Wanchuku, would like to appreciate you. Some of the things they said about breach of protocols, Kirian, you know, very well applied to the Federal Capital Territory. Exactly. Go to the markets. Today is Wednesday. Of course, go to any of the markets in the Amak area, which is the Municipal Council of Abuja, and you'll find that people, there's no social distancing, no face mask. It's just people are haggling and buying, so on and so forth. That is risky for us.
Very dangerous.
But we do hope that people will take the precautions and then follow the protocols appropriately. Dr. Teresa Wanchuku, Deputy State Epidemiologist of the Federal Capital Territory, thank you for being with us on Good Morning
Thank you
Nigeria
very much for having me.
From Mina, Niger State, we're joined by the State Commissioner of Health, Dr. Mohammed Makunsidi. Thank you very much to see him there in the middle of your screen. And on the right side, via Skype from Gombe, Professor Idris Muhammad, who is chairman of the Gombe State Committee on COVID-19. Prof, I delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And that's the end of today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you so much for being part of it, and we'd like to see you again tomorrow. My name is Kirian Umaye.
Stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadono.